Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this webinar for the Summer Stipends Program aimed at nominators and prospective applicants. I'm going to get started in just a moment. I would like to confirm that my PowerPoint is visible and ask that um, my colleagues keep monitoring the uh, lobby for to admit people. But I will go ahead and get started. Again, I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Beauty Bragg. I'm a senior program officer in the Division of Research Programs, and I'm the team lead for the Summer Stipends program. I'm joined this afternoon by my colleague Gwendolyn Yates, who is the program analyst for the Summer Stipends program, and my colleague Landy Watley, who is a program officer in the Division of Research. They will be helping me to collect questions and answers during the presentation. And overall, we're here to tell you more about the program, to answer your questions, and walk you through some of the highlights of the program in the application process. I have about 35 minutes of remarks, and then I'll leave plenty of time for uh, question and answer. I do want to let people know that the webinar is being recorded, and we will post the recording on the program webpage as soon as we have it processed and are able to put it up, probably about a week. Please note that closed captioning is available if you need it. You can click the box on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. So here is our agenda for the afternoon. I will give an overview of the Summer Stipends program, provide some key program details, discuss its goals, discuss the eligibility criteria, and the nomination process, say a few words about our review criteria and the contents of an application, and finally give you some hints about where to find more information. Again, you can put questions in the chat as we go along, but also we'll have an opportunity for a verbal exchange at the end. So here are our main goals with the program. The idea is to support outstanding advanced humanities research in all disciplines and fields. Um, the projects that we fund can be valuable to scholars, general readers, or both audiences. The program supports projects at any stage of development, so that can be early, middle, or late stage. But we do find that the grants are often most useful for researchers at the early stage or at the end of the writing process. I am going to forecast or begin by explaining some changes for the 2024 competition. For the first time in a long while, we've made significant changes in the program. What we've done is to revamp the program to focus on the portion of the scholarly community that has not won support from any of our individual programs, such as fellowships, awards for faculty, public scholars, and the like. So we are limiting eligibility in this program to those who have not received an individual award previously. Second, given the expansion of programs in the Division of Research since the inception of Summer Stipend, we wanted to try to create a pool that would be something closer in size to its earlier numbers. So this year we are limiting nominations to one per campus. With these changes, we're inviting you to think of the program as a first step, a kind of introduction to the NEH and a first step along the way to success in our other programs that have bigger funding amounts and longer periods of performance. Finally, another big change for us is an increase to the stipend, which is now set at $8,000 for the 2-month award period. We'll retain exemptions to the nomination uh, requirements the exemptions that we introduced in 2022 will be retained, but I'll say more about that later in the presentation. Here are some of the program details, the application decision dates, those kinds of things, our funding ratios, but really the most important idea here or fact here is that the award is for 2 months and that it must be taken continuously. I would like to add that usually the award is taken in the summer months, but in fact, awardees can choose any 2-month period during which they can commit to a full-time work plan, full-time and continuous work plan. The summer stipends program is, of course, open to all disciplines in the humanities and also to projects from the social sciences and sciences. Um, so we usually think of the humanities disciplines as defined by our founding legislation as the traditional disciplines like history, literature, philosophy, jurisprudence, religious studies, and the like. But we do welcome applications from from scholars in the social sciences, as long as those projects are using humanistic methods and addressing questions of humanity's significance. And when we talk about humanistic methods, we really mean things like the use of archival data, case studies, or even ethnographic approaches. And again, on this, in terms of thinking about who should apply, we want to emphasize that the exemptions to nominations exist to encourage applications from particular sectors, including independent scholars, faculty at Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian serving institutions, Native American non-tribal institutions, predominantly Black institutions, as well as Asian American, Native American, and Pacific Islander serving institutions. Generally, people use the summer stipends program to fund research and writing. Many of the projects, of course, result in book or monograph publications, but we are seeing other types of products as well, including ebooks and digital publications, as well as peer-reviewed articles. Um, Translations and editions with critical apparatus are also fully eligible in this program. So um, that's the a snapshot of the range of projects that we fund. Here are a few examples of some recent works or works that have been published recently that were funded by summer stipends grants. And we just like to give you a sense of the kind of range of topics in the humanities that uh, we fund in this program. So, talking about who is eligible to apply, um, in general, any U.S. citizen is eligible to apply, and as well as foreign nationals who have been living in the U.S. for the 3 years preceding the application deadline, which this year is September 18th, 2024. Um, so beyond those broad conditions of eligibility, I think it's also helpful for applicants to know that the program does not require that applicants to hold an advanced degree. They don't require, the program does not require institutional affiliation. So independent scholars are welcome. Um, the restrictions within those broad categories are, as I've already mentioned, that you cannot have already held another NEH individual fellowship award, and also that you may not be currently enrolled in a degree program. Um, those who are in degree programs, currently enrolled students do have, there is one exception, which is that if that person has completed all the requirements for the degree and are simply awaiting conferral, then that is an eligible applicant. But they would be required to submit a letter of confirmation of their status as complete at the date, their status at the date of the program deadline, September 18th. And that letter would need to come from either a dean or the chair of the conferring department. So I mentioned the nomination process earlier. This is a unique process um, in the NEH. We require tenured and tenure track faculty to be nominated by their institutions. This is a mechanism to limit the submissions in order to kind of broaden the range of applicant institutions. In asking each institution or each campus to select a nominee, our goal is really to encourage exchange at the local level to help to support faculty research by sharing and offering feedback at that level first. Typically, always institutions run their own nominations process. We ask that an individual institution identify one person as their nominating official and communicate that to its nominee, who should provide that the nominator's name in their application. We will contact that nominator, excuse me. We will contact that nominator to confirm the nomination. And again, this is one new change here is that we are limiting to one per cycle, one nomination per institution per cycle. So I mentioned identifying one nominee or nominator. Um, Here we have some ideas about how that summary of how various institutions across the nation handle these processes. So some institutions use an ad hoc committee to select the nominee. Others maintain a standing committee for selection of the nominees. If you are not sure about if you want to establish one of these committees and you're not sure who on your campus has been awarded or who has served as a panelist for the NEH, please feel free to reach out to the stipends program at stipends at neh.gov, and we'd be happy to provide that information for you. In terms of the work of the committee, we see that most institutions are really making their selections by applying themselves the criteria, the program criteria, which are listed in the notice of funding opportunity. Some institutions also offer some incentives for applicants to apply. These might include encouraging previous applicants to resubmit and renominating previous applicants. It may include things like recognition for the application in an annual review, or even offering internal search money to applicants who were not um, awarded in the NEH competition. So that's a kind of overview of nomination, but I do want to say again that there is a large group of people who are exempt from nomination. And again, these include non-tenure track faculty, non-teaching staff, community college faculty, emeritus faculty, independent scholars, and faculty at these various the minority serving institutions that are listed here. We do have other programs that target that are open to other minority serving institutions and can offer similar terms. So please feel free to ask us questions about that if needed. Thank you. Additionally, I think it's important to know what kinds of projects the summer stipend does not support. Um, these include, there's a full list in the notice of funding opportunity on page 17, but some of the highlights and ones that we commonly see are the creation or performance of art, um, projects that engage in advocacy or policy work are excluded. Teaching materials are, the development of teaching materials is excluded. Empirical social science projects without humanities content are excluded, as well as research for dissertations or theses. So now I want to talk a little bit about a little bit more mechanically about the application process and materials. I want to remind you all that applicants will submit their applications on their own behalf, even when nominated by their institution. The application is submitted through a portal called grants.gov. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. But first, I want to sort of walk through the things that are included in the application that will be required for your application packet. And again, this information is listed in the notice of funding opportunity, abbreviated on this slide as NOFO, on pages 8 through 16. So one of the most important components of your application will be that 3-page narrative. This is the opportunity to discuss the significance of your project. I'll come back and say a little more about that later. There's also a 1-page bibliography. This is an opportunity to demonstrate your knowledge of the field, and you should really be thinking about how what evaluators will be expecting from this bibliography, which is that it should project is grounded. There is a requirement for a 1-page work plan. Again, I'll come back to this, but the idea here is to give as clear a picture as you can of how your time will be occupied, and to allow reviewers to make a judgment about feasibility there, or sufficiency, or any that kind of a range of questions. There is also a two-page resume or CV required. Um, this is an opportunity for you to focus on the work that you've done that really kind of is relevant to and in support of the project for which you're applying. Um, an opportunity to demonstrate your competencies for that work and additional skills or experiences for like language, for instance, that might feed into or support the efforts of the project. For certain kinds of projects, such as editions and translations, or database projects, or even visual projects that center on visual material, excuse me, you can uh, either optionally submit, or in the case of editions and translations, you are required to submit some appended materials. Um, Projects other than these should not include appendices. Doctoral students who are waiting for conferral of their degree, I mentioned this earlier, would also provide uh, in this application the letter of confirming their status, and applicants who are delinquent on federal debts may should supply an explanation of the federal debt. We do try to remove that component from the application version that reviewers see, just as a note. Um, Additionally, you'll be asked to submit a summary description of your proposal. You're limited there to 1,000 characters. It's good to check that so that your uh, description doesn't cut off in the middle of a sentence or an idea. That's the first thing that reviewers will see, and it's something that NEH staff use to understand how to uh, evaluate, how to categorize your application so that it gets to the right reviewers. You'll also be asked to submit the names and email addresses of two referees. Ideally, those referees should come from two different institutions, or from institutions other than your own, and from people who know your project well. Missing letters do not disqualify your project, but it is more helpful to reviewers if you have those letters included. Those letters, as noted here, will be due October 11th for this cycle, and recommenders will get a prompt from the NEH about 10 days after the deadline, and then we'll have 2 weeks to send the letters in. So I said I'd come back to the narrative and say a bit more about that. Beginning on page 9 of the notice, you'll find an explanation of all of the parts that should be in your narrative. The first of these is the significance and contribution of the research. So there you're really trying to convey why this project is important. The second category, and we recommend these as actual subheadings within your narrative. So the second one would be the organization and methods of your project. This is in order to give reviewers a sense of how you're actually going to accomplish the work, how you're going to make the argument, what are the supporting texts, what how does it unfold? How do the chapters unfold, for instance? Um, Third is the your competencies, skills, and access for the project. And this is really an opportunity to show why you're the right person to do this work, how you have the skills and access as well as competencies to actually address the questions that you're raising. The final product and dissemination is really about showing how your work will reach the appropriate audience or audiences. So what press? Are there other additional plans for um, digital sites or podcasts or any number of things? And of course, multiple forms of dissemination are not required. But it is good to give a clear picture of the plan for reaching the audience. And then finally, your work plan. Again, this is a way of showing reviewers how you're going to accomplish the work um, and whether how you've mapped out the steps. So that's an overview of the narrative content. We do recommend that you look at the examples that we have available on the website to see how others have done it. And forgive my moving the screen. So the review criteria is something that you want to keep in mind as you are crafting your narrative. Um, your goal is to make the case for your project based on the criteria that you know will be applied by the reviewers. So you can use those criteria to structure your narrative. And I would like to direct you to page 10 of the Notice of Funding Opportunity, which includes a table that shows how the suggested narrative sections relate to various criteria. In the next couple of slides, I'll say a little bit more about each of the criteria. The first criteria, intellectual significance and of the proposed project. This is one of the most important criteria. It really, again, as I've said, is focused on why this project is needed. It's your opportunity to tell the reader what your project is about and how it's going to contribute to your specific field in a way that advances research and knowledge in the field as well as in humanities broadly, the humanities broadly. So here you want to be careful to make sure that you're presenting those ideas in a way that both a specialist and a generalist would be able to understand. The second criteria is criterion is the what. What is the shape of your project? What will you do during the grant period to realize the project's goals? So again, thinking about the general reader is important. You want them to be able to see how you are positioning your scholarship in the larger field and to describe how the actions you're taking will work to answer the research questions you've posed. So, of course, your proposal and the project should be clear and organized, and this should be reflected in your application, which of course will, if it's clearly organized and presented in a clear narrative, that will build confidence among the reviewers. The third criterion is about how will you achieve the goals of your project. So you should provide enough detail in your work plan so that reviewers will have a good sense of what you're doing from week to week or month to month, however you are dividing the time within that 2 months. Um, and so that they can evaluate whether there's a realistic sense of how much work you can get done during that period. So we encourage you to be very specific. If you're going to work on chapter 5, then say that. Or if you're going to a particular archive to look at particular box or boxes, let the reviewers know that, and then any next steps for how to incorporate that material. Um, you may also want to, it's very useful to give some sense of what will have been accomplished before the award period and what your plan is for finalizing the project. So you're really being asked to think about very specifically about where you'll be in your project, um, even though that might be 9 months out from the application date. The fourth criterion is about who you are as a scholar and why you're the right person to do this work. So of course you want to emphasize your strengths, any exceptional language abilities that the project requires, or research skills and experience that you have that will allow you to move through the material efficiently. Um, this is also part of where your CV will be very helpful in terms of letting reviewers see your research and publication experience. Um, your reviewers will understand that the applicants to this program and all of our others are at different stages of their careers and levels of experience. So um, those are things that can be taken into account, and you can use this section of your narrative that is related to competencies, skills, and access to um, demonstrate the relevant experiences. And finally, the last criterion asks reviewers to evaluate the likelihood of success. So there you're attempting to convince your readers that you will be able to finish the project, even though this doesn't need necessarily to be done within the grant period. Um, and also you want to show how you're going to reach the audiences that you've identified for this project. So, once you have all those materials together, I just want to say a few words about what you can expect in terms of the actual submission process. As I've mentioned, individuals submit for themselves. The institution does not submit for you. You would be submitting your applications through a portal called grants.gov. And here I've laid out some ideas, some list of some of the other documents that will be required in addition to um, the narrative components. So these include the application for federal assistance SF 2424 form, which asks you for a lot of personal information, your phone number, your name, your email address, mailing address, your congressional district. There's a lookup tool, an identifier tool within that form that if you need to find that district. You'll also be asked to submit your project title. Um, that title, if you receive an award, will be visible to the public. So we ask that you make it something clear and direct that the general public will understand. Um, you'll include the project description, 1,000 characters, as I mentioned before, as well as the start and end dates of your project, and then provide an electronic signature. The supplemental form for individuals will ask you for some additional information or some other important things, including for you to mark up to 3 project fields, as well as your own director field or your field of study. Um, that information is very important. We use it to help us choose what evaluators should review your application. So if you chose the primary field of history and then 2 additional fields that sort of, begin to reflect the subfields that you're working in, that's the best way to approach that. We also, that form will ask you to indicate your status as junior or senior. Um, junior scholars are defined, we define it as those who are 7 years or fewer beyond their terminal degree at the deadline date. Um, This form will also ask you for the names and addresses of your referees and their affiliations. So that is important information as well. Please only provide 1 email address per referee, as the system can accommodate more, and if it is confused, they will not get the prompt to submit your letters. That supplemental form for individuals will also ask you to, if you are tenured or not exempt from nomination, tenured or tenure track and not exempt from nomination, this will be the place where you would indicate the name and email address of the nominating official on your campus. And we seek confirmation from them in October as well. An additional form is the project location, project performance site and location form. It's pretty simple. We just want to know where where you will be working. So if you're visiting an archive, you would list that address. And if you're visiting an archive for 2 weeks and then going back to your home or institutional office, you'd also list that site. So the form will accommodate multiple sites. And then finally, you upload as attachments in PDF form those those components of the narrative that we've already discussed. And finally, you then will submit your application through the grants.gov portal. Um, I just wanted to give a few tips here or a few pointers here. It's very important that you create an individual applicant profile in your account. Otherwise, you mechanically will not be able to submit your application. We also encourage you to submit early and let you know that there's it's better to avoid, technical problems, crashes, late timestamps due to delayed transmission, by going ahead and submitting early. If you've submitted a week in advance and realize, oh, there's something missing, you can resubmit your application. And in all cases, we will use the last validated online submission, the latest one. If you do have technical problems, please call the grants.gov helpline. They're very helpful. They're open 24/7 except for federal holidays. And they can usually help you address your issue. The number is here on the slide, but it's also listed in the notice of funding opportunity. So I'm going to stop here by reminding you, I know I've given you a lot of information in a pretty short amount of time, but we have lots of resources, our website, our staff, the notice of funding opportunity has all kinds of details. Our program pages include sample application narratives as well as a broader list of recently funded projects. So please feel free to use those resources. And also, I invite you to come back on August 21st at 2 p.m. for another webinar that will be focused on application writing tips. So I'm going to open it up for questions now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm happy to take questions from, if you want to, I guess put them in the chat. I don't know if you want to unmute yourself. I'm not completely sure that you're able to do that. Gwen or Landy, where should I start with these questions? Oh, I see. I'll
I
start with
say
the raised
start. Oh,
hands.
okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the raised hands at first.
Okay, and then there's a couple about whether or not an institution can still nominate someone if, let's say, someone that's exempt from a nomination from that same institution is applying. So if a non-tenure track
Yes,
faculty member,
yes,
so
yes. So, yes, there's one allowable nominee, and then, yes, anyone who's exempt from the nomination requirement can also apply. And I see 3 hands right now, so I'll take those and then I'll come back to Gwen and Landy for any additional highlights from the chat. I'm gonna call on Danielle Thompson, please. I have made it so you can unmute yourself, I believe.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Beauty.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for all of this. I'm from Amherst College, and we have a faculty member who's working on an application. She would like to use the funds for work on a book project. However, the book will be in early development. So in the organization and methods section, it asks for, a plan for how it asks for her to outline how she plans to organize the book. And
Mhm.
she doesn't really have that set yet. And so I'm just wondering how you would advise her to think about that, because it is going to be very early stage. Over the next academic year, she's hoping to write an article, or she's planning to write an article. And then the summer will be her kickoff into moving that into book form. Does that make sense?
Okay. I think so. It's early stage. The
Yeah.
chapter outline is not there yet. How to handle that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess my suggestion would be to acknowledge that, but also give a sense of the topics that the applicant expects to take on or expects to arise in as the book unfolds. And maybe an indication of the work that what additional steps will be taken to narrow that down and give it form.
Okay. Okay. That was my instinct as well. So thank you. I appreciate sort of confirmation on that and a little more advice to help her steer it. So yes, great. Thank you.
Abs- Absolutely. Thank you for attending. I see two more hands that I will go to. Uh, Dan Moriarty, I'm unlocking your mic. I guess that's the word.
Awesome. First of all, thank you so much for all of this. I just had a quick question. So I have a couple sort of different ideas that I've already worked on a little bit that I'd like to apply to this. One is a book, and one is a documentary that would feature
Mhm.
interviews with scholars and experts on deindustrialization in New England, as well as uh, on-site footage. I was just wondering, is a documentary a medium that is sort of eligible for this, or would it be a sort of a safer bet to do a book project, which the book would be on northern Maine, the state of
So
Maine?
that's an interesting question. A documentary is a an allowed or reasonable product, but what you have to do is distinguish what we can't fund are the creative parts of making. So we can fund research supporting a documentary, but we can't fund the scripting, we can't fund uh editing, we can't fund the shooting. Those all move into the realm of creating art. So it's a bit tricky, but certainly the idea that research supporting a documentary project is allowable.
Okay, great. Thank
So
you so
does
much.
that kind of answer the question, Dan? I know you asked me to choose between the two, but I can't do that.
No, I understand. No, it does answer. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I see more hands popping up. Um, I only see one name here, Sandrine. I've unlocked your mic if you want to ask your question to the group. Okay, why don't we come back and we'll move ahead to number 3, Dolores McElroy. Dolores, are you able to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Oh, there we go. Thank you for this.
Yes,
I'm
you're welcome.
okay. Thank you so much. I was wondering if it would be appropriate to attach a book contract and reviewer comments.
Um, it Those are not necessary. That's something you could address in your narrative, is just to indicate that you have a contract and that you've received reviewer comments, but appending them, I think, is what you're asking about. Those would be actually unallowable appendices.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Let's see. I see number 3 now is Michelle Feder Nadehoff. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Are you able to unmute and ask your question?
Hello, could you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much for doing this. My question is, as an independent scholar, so it's a little bit of two-pronged. I'm an independent scholar, and I'm wondering if there's a percentage of eventual grant recipients that are nominated versus independent scholars. Like, is there a breakdown of 50% are nominated, and is being nominated and institutionally associated make your application stronger from the get-go?
It
That,
does not. And we haven't really broken the pools down statistically, but we do look at the statistics on our um awardees, and we usually have um a handful of the 99. We have a range of um usually somewhere about 3 to 5% of independent scholars who get awards.
okay, so that's out of, so then like 97% are affiliated, right?
Um,
Is that what that
there
means? Like, not the other
there's a
95% are
whole
nominated or affiliated?
well, affiliated and nominated are two different categories. So
Mm,
yes, it is likely that the majority of the pool is affiliated with some institution, or the majority of the awardees, and that is a reflection of the distribution of the pool as well. But to nominated and not nominated um, are not nominated and affiliated are not necessarily synonymous. If you recall, we have a number of exempted categories, including community college faculty who are also represent another several percent in the pool of awardees
yeah,
typically. And then faculty who come from other um, special mission institutions, or federally designated
yeah,
institutions. Then, so,
uh-huh.
but yes, but I guess the question was, I mean, beyond the numbers do kind of uh, shape the awardee, the distribution, but um, there is no preference for institutional type for origins, institutional origins.
But it does sound like being an independent scholar makes it more unlikely to be able to get the award if if someone isn't institutionally affiliated. It seems like there's like a lesser chance of being able to be to get it, to be
Uh,
awarded.
it's just a smaller proportion of the pool.
Mm.
I don't have the proportional match, but we cannot award more than we can't award more independents than apply.
Okay. So in other words, because you don't have the statistics on how many independents, like if 10, what percentage of independent scholars apply, you can't really compare how many get it.
Right.
Is that it? Okay.
That's what I'm saying. That is information that if you really want to see it, I would invite you to email me and I can find it, but it's not information that I have handy.
Okay. Yeah. No, I can. I would do that. I'm applying for several grants for a new book project, um, and so it's kind of like you're always weighing which ones you should be applied to and which ones seem more feasible. And I guess on the other question you might have addressed it. I was just wondering if there was an approach to interdisciplinary scholarship, because I'm a PhD anthropologist, but I'm also an MFA artist, and I'm bringing theoretical concepts from long-term, over 20 years of research in Mexico, and I'm bringing some concepts that I'm applying to contemporary artists. And so my new book project is on contemporary artists located in the Midwest. And I'm just wondering if taking a project like that, because when the person who asked about the documentary versus the publication and the focus was on the research, it made me think that maybe if the book project is on contemporary artists, even though it's based on a theoretical concept, that it might not, that also might make it not quite appropriate for this grant.
We really try to, well, first of all, I'll say we fund a many interdisciplinary projects. I
Okay.
think that what we're looking for, the thing to think about in terms of how to frame your project is really to emphasize what is interpretive about it, and where the analysis is, and how this is going to advance a conversation in art history, say. So where does it fit into the, landscape, and how is it advancing the discussion, I think would be the ways to approach
Right, and it could be
that.
that it's expanding concepts within anthropology, right? Like,
Yes, in
yeah,
whatever field or fields that you are intervening in. Yes.
yeah, but it is
Thank you.
interdisciplinary. But thank you so much for taking the time. I'm sorry.
You
I know
too.
these were
Thank
two
you.
big questions. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your attendance. It looks like we have one more question in the chat and 2 more minutes. So one more question with the hands up. I only see one name, Natak. I have unlocked your mic. If you could unmute yourself and uh ask your question, we'd be happy to take it. Okay. Hello. Okay, then we'll take, is there one question from the chat that, let's see. So, Lorraine Firestein has dropped in the chat a question about grant.gov's workspaces only seem to apply to, quote, organizations. How does an individual apply through the workspace? So this is an idea that I was emphasizing earlier. Applicants need to set their profile as an individual profile, and there is a tab that says Manage Profiles. You can click on that, and that is the way to establish that space, that to set your profile appropriately so that you can create a workspace. I see just now that Gwen has already explained that. I'm so sorry. And we have one more question here, one more hand raised. Heidi Keller-Lapp. Are you able to unmute yourself and ask your question? I'm going to take that as a no. And I see that we're right up at time. I apologize if I was unable to get to your question in either the conversation or the chat, but I am going to briefly put up, oops. I'm trying to put up some information. Yes. My contact information for Gwen Yates, the program analyst, as well as contact information for the stipends program. So please feel free to email your question to us at stipends@neh.gov or to reach out to one of us individually. I really thank you all for attending this afternoon, and again, invite you back to our second webinar on application writing tips for scheduled for August 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much.